Hello and welcome to this video. I have a friend of the channel here, Mr. Martin Speake, who is a jazz saxophonist with an illustrious career spanning around about 40 years on the British jazz scene. I know him from back in the day when he was playing in Itchy Fingers, but he's gone on to play with some of the jazz greats. And I would love to be talking to him about all the incredible players he's worked with over the years. But recently, you got into a little bit of bother, didn't you, Martin? Can you tell us what's happened?
Yeah, this involved story. So it's about the 2 year anniversary now. 2 years ago, I responded to an email by the principal of Trinity Laban, where I've been teaching for 23 years, and I thought I was a valued member of staff. So his email, which was sent to all staff and students, was promoting his BLM, Black Lives Matter Diversity Action Plan, and within it, he said there's systemic inequality in the institution and the wider world, really, he was implying. And please give feedback. As ever, please, I'd like to hear your feedback. That wasn't just to me, that was to all
Hmm.
students and all staff. And I know nobody else fed back because they probably know the game. So naively, as I said earlier, thinking I was a valued member of staff, and he might want to hear my opinion, being an experienced jazz musician, unlike him, who's not even a musician. I've been a musician playing on what you'd call the jazz scene for over 40 years and played all over the world in about 30 countries. So I've got some knowledge. Whether I'm right or wrong is irrelevant. It's that I've got my experience that I wanted to share. So
Hmm.
I was questioning this basic ideology of BLM or critical race theory and the systemic inequality, and that whites are privileged and blacks are not, don't have any privilege, and they're always underdogs. So I was questioning this, and I'm prepared to be proven wrong. It's fine. And I said, can we have a discussion about this, please? Because this is my experience, and for people interested who don't know about this case, my email is online all over the place. That was my email response. So you haven't got the whole context of the principal's email or his statements. Anyway, I responded and said, well, my experience is not really this at all. And I listed a number of black musicians, many of whom are friends. Well, I don't know whether they are now or not, but my friends at the time.
Yeah.
Listed them. I gave them examples of people who are relatively successful. No one makes a lot of money playing this
Hmm.
music, but they're successful in their uh, on the scene. People know about them. They've record deals. They're funded by at times, by funding bodies. My point was they are not discriminated against, and that was a lot of examples, and there are probably other examples I could give. That was really what it was, and I broadened it out to, yeah, my whole career, and I hadn't seen this systemic inequality, which he kind of meant racism, I suppose. I don't know what the term means.
Hmm.
So I replied. I didn't get a response. I wanted a discussion about this first, primarily with the principal. I copied it in with the head of jazz, who was a friend of mine for 30 years, apparently, and the director of music. They were copied in. No one replied for 5 weeks. So obviously they didn't see it was urgent at the time, or a terrible email, which later on I'm led to believe it was on social media. So they didn't see it as urgent. Then I got an email saying, "Oh, the emails got into the hands of students, and one of them is anxious." And I'll just backtrack, because what happened is during those 5 weeks, I shared it with my email with a third year student who I always chatted with about all kinds of stuff, intelligent guy,
Hmm.
and I didn't see any problem sharing this with him. He didn't give it to anyone, interestingly, to his credit. He read it out to 4 or 5 other students. They got annoyed, or one of them got so annoyed he was anxious. I was told he was anxious, and went in to see the head of jazz and said, "I don't like Martin's email." Okay. Um, I don't know what he wanted to do about it. And so they then emailed saying, "Oh, due to this one student being anxious, we are temporarily halting your classes." And I was on a point 0.5 fractional post, half a job that I loved, uh, because I loved teaching the music. I loved interacting with the students. I played with many of them out of lesson time. Some I
Hmm.
did gigs with. It's a community. It's a great thing. And my classes were temporarily halted, was what the term was. Basically, they were suspending me, but they didn't want to use that term as a kind of legal term. It's a bit more dramatic. They then, what's interesting about this whole story is you would never have heard of this. Nobody would have heard about it if it was sorted out that weekend. The two students, the one I shared it with and the one who was anxious, I emailed and said, look, do you want to meet up and talk about this email? I'm sure we can resolve it. And they both said, yeah, that sounds like a really good idea. And I'll get the head of jazz with us as well, so it's not just the three of us. They bypassed me completely. The director of music said, I don't want you meeting with students before you meet with us. So that was the end of it. So it looked like there's a plan here, to be honest. So who knows? Could have been completely solved then. We would have agreed to disagree. The student would have been fine. And maybe his anxiety would have stopped.
Or you could have agreed with him, and then you could have seen, you could have put a opinion out there, and then actually gone, oh, I can see your point of view now, which is
Exactly,
the whole point of having these sort of, conversations with people. You could be wrong.
Exactly, I've said that all along. I don't actually think I am wrong because it's my experience, but and interesting, no one has tried to prove me wrong.
Yeah.
In any way. And people have just shouted me down on social media, or not shouted me, but gone for me on social media originally 2 years ago. I don't know what's going on now because I don't really use social media. I mean, I'm on Twitter, X, and I've got an Instagram account, but I don't interact with it much. So classes were stopped, and the head of jazz, HR, and the director of music, this is 3 days after this incident, which is after a weekend, organised, I can only call it a secret meeting with the whole of the jazz course who turned up.
And is this students as well?
No, this is no staff.
No staff, just students.
95 students all turned up. And the only reason I know this, about this meeting, is because one student, postgrad student, who I played with and was very good friends with, texted me from the meeting and said, they're having a meeting about your email. Okay, so they had the meeting, no minutes taken. Okay, that's highly suspect in my view. And it feels like historically now I've kind of worked it all out that they were exacerbating the situation rather than calming it down. And there are no adults in the room. Basically, these people in head of jazz and director of music, they don't want to wind the students up. So they're all clamoring to see my email, apparently. And to his credit, the student I shared it with didn't give it to anyone. He just read it out to those half dozen students. The next morning, it was 2 years, this is a lot. This is an old story now, two years ago. The next morning, I was called in to see head of jazz and the director of music. And I had hardly any sleep. The head of jazz had hardly any sleep. So it was quite a fraught meeting, quite emotional. And the head of jazz at one point said, I fear for your safety. Wow. I mean, well, they're not going to protect me if I walk out into the courtyard. The students are all going to attack me. I fear for your safety. And he said, the students are clamoring to see the email. Really, if you don't send the email out to them, I'm going to resign. Which interestingly was never put in the minutes of that meeting. And I asked him, and I said, can you correct the minutes? Because he said that, and they've never corrected it, unfortunately. So he said that, and that was kind of emotional pressure. We were up to that point, we've been very good friends. We made 2 albums together. I'd hung out with him and his family, we're close. And this is a story that many people who've been cancelled tell me the same thing. These old friends, they just go. A lot of them end up being against you after 30 years. It's shocking, actually. Anyway, so we had this meeting, went on for an hour or two, I think. And in the end, I agreed, okay, because I was thinking, okay, the email is going to go to the students, and I want a discussion about the issue anyway, so that would be great. I was naive. In the whole 2 years, there's never been a discussion about the issue. And the students, one student, postgrad student, started up a petition on change.org against me to have me, I'm racist, I should be removed from the institution. It's appalling I'm teaching young people. Okay. She's done some chip on her shoulder for something, for some reason, who knows. And then it went on social media. So I was very naive, thinking it would still be internal and we could have meetings with the students and discuss this interesting issue, race and jazz. Or it's called race, I think it's just skin colour, but race and jazz. Never happened, although they kept threatening, no, students want to speak to you about this. We'll organise some groups, small groups of 10 each and half an hour each, and we'll all chat about it. You can have another member of staff there. None of this happened. Is it crazy? So it was a really traumatic time. I went on sick leave because the ramifications were huge. It wasn't just this institution. Gigs were cancelled. A record CD label called Discus were going to put my CD out and refused to do it. People wouldn't play with me. People wouldn't play my music in other bands, even though I wasn't there. It was incredible. The mob rule and witch hunt was huge. The fact I've survived it is amazing, to be honest. And I'll go into that because I'm a pretty strong character anyway, but Free Speech Union got involved very early on. Luckily, I just joined. Free Speech Union were amazingly supportive, hired incredible solicitors, Doyle Clayton and Rosie Kay of Freedom in the Arts, which had also recently been formed, maybe 2023, the year before, because she'd been cancelled. That's another story. So these people have been incredibly supportive of me, financially, to the legal case, emotionally, practically.
So, Martin, before we get to the legal case, which is going to be the main meal of this conversation, because obviously anyone watching this can go back. We've spoken, done incredible in detail examination of what happened to you when it happened. You've actually filled in a lot of information that I didn't know, so it's obvious that things like that, what was actually said, and fearing for safety and all that bit. That's quite interesting. Now, the actual ramifications, what I think you can boil this down to, you said an interview, you put an email out, which was a private email, which questioned the ideology of how to deal with racism. It wasn't necessarily and I would say there's nothing in there that you could actually construe as racist. What you're doing, in far as I'm concerned, was you were critiquing or questioning critical race theory and neo-Marxist sort of ideology that I believe has taken over the education establishments that have now made them unable to operate as academic institutions because you are not allowed to think freely. That's a major deal. You're questioning that. So what was your punishment? What's happened to your career? Can you just really simply explain what happened to your career over this? Not just your teaching, because obviously you've never gone back to teaching, have you, at Trinity Laban?
No, so there are three. I'll talk about the teaching because it's three conservatoires. So I had a fractional post, 0.5 job, little salary that never really went up. Anyway, but it's great. I loved it. I loved the place. So that was a bit of security for a jazz musician. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's a teaching job that I was good at. Okay, the other two places, the Guildhall and the Royal Academy of Music, is hourly paid. However, the Royal Academy of Music, I've been at 35 years. I'm still on the books there, but they're not giving me any work because the whole ramifications and the wider issues are that students, unfortunately, are completely captured for all kinds of reasons or scared shitless. So it's a knock-on effect. That's basically what's going on. It's a knock-on effect. Oh, the students at Trinity Laban boycotted Martin Speake, so we're going to as well because he's horrendously racist because of an email that's not racist. But I've mentioned the issue. I've mentioned the issue that should not be mentioned. So the students at both those places said, we're not going to study with Martin anymore. And the heads of jazz go, oh, okay, then fine. Because
so the effect
are customers now.
Yeah, so the effect is you lost all your teaching.
Yeah, I lost all my teaching. Then further, because I'm playing as well.
Yeah.
Not hundreds of gigs now, but playing in the public arena venues. So venues cancelled me, apart from one at the time. Venues cancelled. I had a handful of gigs. They cancelled. I said, why are you cancelling? Because we don't agree with your email. I said, what's that got to do with me playing? No, we don't agree with your email. Bye. That was it. And then Leicester, which I think I did tell you at the time, maybe in the asked Leicester Jazz House. I was booked to play there with a quartet, and remember, people are still playing with me. It was interesting who was not going to play with me and who was going to play with me. The brave souls. who play with me, and they're close friends now because that's tough for them.
They stuck by you. So what was the one venue that did have you on? Let's give
The
them a bit of
606 Club in London, in Fulham, which Steve Ruby's been running that for years, And it was an interesting thing. He said, I'll tell you something he said that was very interesting. He said, I said, Steve, thanks so much for keeping the gig on. You see my email? He said, no, I've not read your email, but people have told me about it. I'll probably disagree with it anyway. I said, really? And then he tells me this story of a drummer, Winston Clifford. I'm just going to mention names now. He told me just great drummer, Winston Clifford, who was a friend of mine for a long time. We played together. So he said, Winston Clifford said to me years ago, this is before all this nonsense, probably before COVID as well. He said, Winston said to him, I want to know people book me because they like my playing, not because I'm black. And there you have it. That is the simple explanation of my email. Okay, so black musicians know about this. Larry Bartley's another one who I was friends with, bass player. And Larry, when I was going in, this is later on in the story at Trinity Laban, and I'll get onto the wider gig thing and world. I was going in after sick leave, after 5 months. I went back to Trinity Laban because they said, we want you to come back to work. I mean, that's hilarious.
They do that. They don't mean it.
You know the game, right? You know the game.
Yeah.
So I'm going back, and I know it's not going to happen, but I'm fulfilling my contract.
They just don't. They've got to try and avoid constructive dismissal. And so as soon as they say you can't come back, it doesn't matter what the issue is, it's constructive dismissal. So that's why they say that.
Yeah, but
and I bet they said it right up front because the HR person would have been told to say it straight away to make sure that you knew it's not constructive dismissal.
But ironically, it ended up being constructive dismissal.
Well, this is the thing, because I think anybody who really wants to get into the detail of this, and I always felt a little bit bad. I was so angry at the time that I was talking a lot. I've let you tell the story here, but if you want to go back, we discuss it at length. The point is that it's virtually every aspect of your life has been destroyed by these people. The Free Speech Union get involved and they fund and provide the support and representation to take. Who did you take to court? Was it Laban?
Trinity Laban.
Trinity Laban. And the results come through. So can you tell us the results up first, and then tell us how that went? Because I think we could argue about whether you were right or wrong. Okay.
All right. Can I hadn't finished something I wanted to say about Larry Bartley, a great bass player I'm friends with, about the black musicians being aware of this race, so-called race thing. So Winston Clifford said it directly. I want people to book me because I'm a great drummer. Yeah. I'm black. So he knows that issue is there in the air.
Yeah.
He must have felt he was being booked because he was black. Larry Bartley said the same thing. So Larry Bartley was teaching at Trinity Laban. This is very interesting because he was one of the few people. I saw him in the corridor. No one else is talking to me or looking the other way. I said, Larry, you see my email? He said, yeah, I've seen it. I don't agree with a lot of it, but I totally agree with you about people hiring black musicians to get gigs, to have in their band to get gigs. And I said, well, why don't you come in and let's talk about it. Come in. And he came, very nice of him. He came in 3 or 4 weeks in a row, an hour early before his class. But bear in mind, I'm going into Trinity Laban in the autumn of 2024. And I'm being boycotted, 100% boycott. So I'm going into my classes with no one in the class. I'm just practicing and composing and transcribing. So I'm getting paid to do what I would do at home. It's insane. And no students are coming in. They're all in the courtyard laughing at me or whatever, or looking the other way. And Larry, to his credit, would come in and we would chat for 3 weeks in a row about the whole thing. And he broadened it out to his life. And he said, I am really careful. If people book me for a gig, I have to think, are they booking me because I'm black or because they like my playing? He said that. Winston said that, So there's all kinds of things going on. So back to what you want. The question was the case.
Yeah. So what's the outcome of the case? Let's just state it straight, because we can have opinions and your black friends can have an opinion, but we live in a liberal democracy, I hope. And sometimes the law steps in. And what was the statement of the case?
Well, you could have to read it on their website. Have you seen that on?
Yeah, I looked at it because you sent it to me. Remember, but
So I can't talk about the settlement at all. Okay,
Yeah.
but people can read that statement, that announcement, and if I just ask you about it, if you've read it, how do you perceive it? Because I've spoken to lots of people about it.
It
People
it's it
perceive it in different ways.
it
So, okay,
says it
Andy,
says
so Andy's, so one friend said that's an incredible victory for you, which overall it is.
yeah.
It's a victory. And other people say, well, they're hedging their bet. So I don't know. What's your view on that?
The thing, what I got from it was that categorically you are not a racist.
Yeah.
Categorically, you're entitled to your opinion, and your opinion was not racist. And this is based upon other cases that have happened. So this shows that there's a systemic thing going on, that people are voicing an opinion which is not racist, but the organisations are then destroying them because they think it is racist. I don't know what the case is, but obviously I've had Sean Corby, another jazz musician here, who he's a great man and has fought hard and has gone through this and won it on the other side as well. So this isn't an isolated incident. I read it quite simple, that Trinity Laban are out of order and that they have destroyed you by calling you a racist when you are not a racist. That's what it came across like this. And I got to be honest, have you got your job back? Have they, I mean...
No, this is not going to happen.
I know. You're never going to go back.
I'm not going to be in those places.
No.
I mean, not that they're offering me a job. They don't, they don't want me in these, none of the institutions want me there. The Guildhall pay me off. I'm not at the Guildhall anymore.
My point is that the law proves you're not a racist. They show that these organisations are acting in a terrible way. There is no comeback to these organisations, and they will just carry on doing it. Now, I want to show the damage that has been done to you, even though you've won this court case, because I put something up on Facebook saying, "Isn't it great? Martin's great," and all my friends on the whole said it's absolutely wonderful. But one guy put this on, and it's I'm going to name this guy. It's a guy called Stephen Pratt. Pratt by name and Pratt by nature. And he wrote this as an answer to me saying, very simply, what did I put? Oh, I put a load of stuff. Congratulations to Martin Speake, who has been vindicated for not being a racist after the racial equity ideologues at Trinity Laban asked for his opinion about racism and then got it. Right? So I put that, I've shortened that into a much more put down, better actually. And this bloke has put, now, even though you've won, I read the letter, and besides being championed by a conservative peer and all-round wanker, Toby Young, the fake free speech union, Martin Speake indeed comes across like a moaning, pasty-faced baldy who can't get a gig because he's a bit crap, and so blames Black Lives Matter and critical race theory, which is itself a trap. But you're too dumb and angry to see that. What a puss. I hope more people ignore him in the hallway and boycott his classes. So that idea is out there. I was shocked. I did stand up for you. Someone else has come on and goes, "You sound nice." And I wrote to him, "You are surely living up to your surname. This is just name calling, and you're a liar. Mind Speak had a ton of gigs and got cancelled by prats like you who cannot tolerate anyone having a different political opinion to you. Please block me now so I don't have to read your totalitarian shite." He stopped at that point. I also put out some other things just saying, it's tiresome. It's tiresome when you say this, that you know what they're going to say. There's never any pushback. There's never any explanation to people that they're accusing of racism, of what they're saying that's racist. All you get is that sort of childish, immature name calling, right?
That's what happened originally, I think.
And it's been supported by the powers that be.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing here it's all very sad. This is a bigger issue. There's a wider issue here. That this is all about polarization. So everyone's fighting amongst each other. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And the powers that be like that. I'm talking about way above college.
Do you feel, because I had a politics channel, I took the politics channel down. I've gone through this, and for the whole point, all through this, the reason I've been saying this stuff is very simple. It's got nothing to do with politics or race or anything. It's the impingement on free speech, and even more importantly, free expression.
Yeah.
And I don't believe you can play jazz if you're not allowed to express yourself. Because then, and I've got a problem with the jazz scene as well, because I think the jazz scene has become too prescriptive, and people are scared to play, because because of the moralizing sort of elitist jazz world that jazz has become. It's populated by upper middle class educated people. The only way you can do it is to be funded by some sort of organisation. The organisations of colleges have their idea of what jazz should be and what jazz isn't. And you've got a whole bunch of young students who have spoken to me saying, I want to get into jazz, but I don't know, have I got to learn all these scales and bebop and all this type of, and I just feel that it's all part of the same crushing of youth. Now, I think I know why, and I'm going to tell you why I think it is. Right? The elites, right? Whether they're nationalist elites or globalist elites, right? They're all capitalists. So anyone who thinks that when they're championing one lot on the side of the left, there's no left or right at the top. They're all billionaire capitalists, right? And as you said, they've got to stop people from talking about them. I wonder why. Because what the internet has done is then democratized free thinking and communication. Oh, look what's happening. Terrible things are being found out about our elites continually, to a point where you can't quite get your head around it. Well, how do you stop people talking? You get them to zip. Right now, who are the ones who are going to notice it online and actually question what's going on? The educated middle classes. So what do you do to them? You switch them off by turning them into little robots that are going to shout, heretic, heretic. And that's what you're getting. It's a way of them controlling what people are talking about. We have gone through a whole bunch of stuff that's been discussed online, whether it be, where COVID came from, the vaccinations, the whole, are the elites, worshipping Moloch and sacrificing children? Is there a cover-up of, gangs of Pakistani men in the UK? All of that, that every time you mentioned it, you could have what happened to you happen.
Yeah.
The elites who are not left-wing, right? They're not left-wing because they're elites, have switched off the educated middle classes by entering into the educational establishments and forcing in totalitarian ideas where people who have been educated will turn around and go, that person needs to be shut down completely.
There's a lot in what you're saying here, Andy, and I could pick it apart and agree with everything you're saying. I'll just go back to the totalitarian thing that you're talking about, and we should talk about jazz a bit here, because I don't completely agree with you about your analysis there, because I like teaching in the places, and there is real diversity of what people are into. However, young people, most of them, in any sphere, will get into what there is the most publicity about. So certain jazz musicians are promoted a lot in this scene. And take the saxophone players like Chris Potter or Mark Turner, loads of the young people will be into them unless they search out the lesser known individual players. So that's just a little bit about the jazz thing. The totalitarian thing, it's like a dystopia. We're almost there now. It's 1984.
I actually think it's the opposite. I think what's happening in reality is people are, exercise their democratic right to be able to have an opinion and say stuff, and everyone's terrified. But these ideas, the correct ideas, are slowly winning out. And I could see a point in the future where the internet creates a sort of the sort of large government goes, that you can actually be much more involved in what's happening in your local area. You know, the internet allows you to actually vote on all sorts of different things instantly. We could actually have something, AI can control a lot of the stuff which civil servants do. I can see a point in the future where we, the people, are controlling how we live our lives. And that's the thing. It's got nothing to do with race. When I realised this, that it's got nothing to do with race, that's terrifying for them. But why don't we just log in and, you know, people say, what do you want in your town? What do you want to spend your council tax on? And everyone just says. And then whichever one's the most popular, it wins out. And if you want a political discussion, then people can go in who care about it and argue with each other in a way which is like, you've got a different opinion to me, but let's discuss it and come to a compromise, which is always somewhere in the middle. This is what they're terrified of, because they don't need to be there anymore. And this isn't communism, it's something else. It's like, so what they want is us just all sat in our little rooms, not ever going out with a bloody bucket on our head, pretending that we live on an island where you're allowed to do whatever you want, unlike them who actually have the actual island. I mean, the whole thing, it's like, when I look at what's happened to you, right, and then I think of what jazz represents, and the idea that you and me could sit down and we could start playing the blues now, and you and me be able to play and do and make it as sophisticated as we're able to, and democratic as we're able to, because jazz like opens its arms up to the world. And I have a bee in my bonnet in that I think this is closing jazz down. It's making it right, you know. I've had, as everyone knows, recently an argument with a guy called Truth Savior, who I like very, very much, and he's a lovely guy, but we have a difference of opinion. And every time he says, you're white, you cannot, you know, have an opinion about our culture, and he's on about jazz when he says that, I disagree with him. Now, I respect what he says, and I respect him that we've been able to have a really good conversation about it, and I have changed my opinion based upon what you said. But that idea that you're going to carve jazz into, you know, it's black people's music, right? And what he means is that British black people, it doesn't belong to them. Oh, this is some, yeah, the whole American, the black American jazz, the whole, what's this Nicholas Payton thing? What they never say is if you're African or you're black and British, it doesn't apply to you.
So I come in on any of this because you've actually said loads of stuff, the totalitarian thing, and what I like about one thing you were saying earlier was about the whole local thing, is that's what it should be about, of course. And of course the controllers, they don't want us to be local. No, their idea is one world government. It's the opposite of what you're saying. Now the local thing that's exactly how it should be. I don't know whether it's going to be in that way online necessarily. That we could use being the online thing.
Yeah.
In person with people in a real meeting.
Think of it like this, Martin, and I hate to get so political, but the fact is I believe that jazz doesn't have a power unless it's able to deal with these things. You know, you're a jazz musician. I would love to be a jazz musician. I'm jazz educated. I suppose I can play jazz. We can have this is what we are talking about. When Max Roach did that Freedom Now suite, nobody went, this is terrible, you shouldn't be doing that. I believe that there was an edge to jazz at one point. Now, if we woke up and some virus had taken them all out, everyone over 100 million quid, right, was taken out, what would happen? People would get online and say, God, we need to, where's the councillors? All the council's gone. Okay, then. And they would organise groups online, and before you know it, we'd all be running everything, and we'd be running it at a local level. And I think it would work.
Of course it would work.
Now,
we don't need these people.
Now, the thing that's interesting is, for me, when you look at the left, and an aspect of the left I've never been too keen on is the anarcho-syndicalists, the one that, you know, they're into the ideas of Chomsky, Epstein's mate, Chomsky. So they believe in a sort of communism which is very local, like a kibbutz type of thing. And I've always thought that this is absolutely an oxymoron. You can't have an anarchic communism; it's impossible. And I think people who believe that are really, really naive. But I think there is a kernel of truth in there about where you can control things at a local level, then you should. Now, what's this got to do with jazz and music? Well, I believe that we're going to return to a much more localized music scene. But these local, but it exists because you're in it right now.
In a way, the jazz thing is a bit like that anyway.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, like, you take these little clubs all around the country. They just have this little local audience. I mean, you have national bands going to them, so if they can afford it. But this is like a little cottage industry, isn't it? That's a parallel universe to all the other nonsense that's going on. And that was what attracted to me, and also the things you're saying about. I thought jazz was some kind of radical, in a good way, challenging the system and free expression, free thought. And I also thought it was a working class music, to be honest.
I agree.
But there is some truth in what you're saying in having seeing myself teaching in these colleges for the last 35 years. First of all, the change in students and the change in mentality when tuition fees were brought in. So I was Royal Academy of Music, right, 1989, around then I started, I think. And there were no fees, which is how it should be, because it's already paid for in taxes anyway.
Yeah.
You're paying double, which is just ridiculous. So this is a scam that Tony Blair introduced, didn't he, I think, and nearly 30 years ago now. And of course, they usher it in. There's this great term, totalitarian tiptoe. They usher it in very slowly, so £1,000 fees, then 3,000, then 9,000. But of course, the foreign students, it's like 20, 30,000? And Trinity Laban have said to me, Alex Ramley, the director of music, who's now got promoted, he's the artistic director of the whole place. He said the main thing is foreign students for them. He's always going abroad to recruit foreign students. So I think I wrote it in an article, but the music is about the third thing on the agenda now. The first thing is the ideology that is, and I'm a victim of, in a way, you could say, what the last 2 years, this ideology being foisted on all the institutions, as you mentioned earlier. Then there's the financial. I mean, I hope maybe the finance comes first, who knows? Ideology and finance. And then, music as well. We better do a bit of that. But we really need these fees. Hence, if a student is anxious, we better take care of that student because we need his fees. And that student who's anxious hardly turned up to anything. And I was told by Trinity, look, you saying a student cannot turn up to anything, do their final, and still get a degree. Yeah. They said that. I mean, and they know that. Everyone knows the game now. This is dysfunctional. This is not good. Now, the balance is, I'm not saying the staff, the tutors should be dictators and decide everything. The whole thing should be a dialogue. But now it's students decide everything. I was told that.
It's not just students, because, there are these unelected quangos that exist behind the colleges.
Government organisations is a really big thing, but also there's the board of governors. Okay?
Yeah.
And I'll give you another example, which is, to me, is insanity. But principal says in that original email, one of those emails around the time that he sent to all staff and students, we've got 50% global majority. And this is a new term that I had to learn, global majority. What is that? It's non-white, right? Non-British, or whatever, non-white. We got 50% global majority on the board of governors. This is really good, but it's not enough yet. What's all that about? Are there 50% global majority in Britain? If you said in Nigeria, we've got 50% white on the board of governors of this institution, they just laugh.
Yeah, but you have to get your head into their thinking. Their thinking is this: white people are they have controlled everything. They've colonized half the world, and they are enslaved, Africans, because they're white supremacists. They want white. They see white should be on top. They control the narrative. The only way you can undo the narrative is by working against it. So you have to actively make sure that you got checks and balances in to make sure the board of governors has got a certain amount of black people on. It's irrelevant of whether these black people have the ability to do the job, because they weren't allowed to learn the skills because those have been withheld from them. Now, the thing that interested me with Larbird, and I'm going to, stick my neck out here, does the organisation Black Music Lives matter?
Black Lives in Music.
Black Lives in Music, yeah, because I've done a little research. Well, say a little research. I've read a lot about this group. Do you think they've got anything to do with this?
Right. So my view of the whole thing is, I can't prove this, of course. I think it comes from them. That organisation was set up after the George Floyd incident, okay, in around 2021, 2020. I don't know when they were set up, around that period. Roger Wilson runs it with his wife. I think they're both on full-time salaries.
Yeah.
So he's on the board of governors at Trinity Lab. So my view, I don't know whether that's true or not. My view is that he advises the principal.
If you've got this sort of unelected, sort of secret organisation behind it, influencing what emails should be done and making sure everyone's saying the right thing, what's the sort of racial makeup on that in that group? Is that half white, half black, or majority, whatever you said? What is it?
Are you talking about the board of governors?
No, I'm on about Black Lives in Music.
Oh, well, it's going to be, I don't know. I haven't really gone into them a lot.
Yeah.
It's going to be 100% black, right?
I would have thought, yeah. I don't know.
It looked
like that. Now, this, there is a mindset out there that thinks that when they hear us talking like this, they're going, "Oh my God, these are racist," because they just pointed out the fact that organisation is all black people. What's wrong with that? I haven't got a problem with an all black. Of course I haven't. I haven't got a problem with black people doing what. But all it is, it's the ideology behind it. It's not that if you went to Larbert and if this ideology hadn't existed.
It's Trinity Larbert, by the way.
It's Trinity Larbert.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. I know. I get where you're coming from. Yeah, it's like I tell you, related to this though, which is related what you said earlier. When I was going in those 5 weeks, no one's talking to me, apart from Larry Bartley.
Yeah.
And one of the classes was a joint class that no one was turning up to, but it was a joint talk with Mark Lockhart, another saxophone friend of mine, who subsequently left Trinity Lab. But the two of us were teaching a composition class, which I loved, by the way. It was great, 3rd and 4th years. So he can't make it that week. So the head of jazz, Hans Koller, employs an ex-student who left a year before, called Rebecca Eklund, a very nice singer that I got on with fine. And so she left a year before. He books her, knowing no one's going to turn up. He's paying her for a couple of hours to teach with me when no one's going to turn up. Anyway, so she comes in. I said, "Oh, well, you're brave, aren't you?" Because she's mates with all the students, still there. I said, "You're brave." Turn up. She said, "Well, I always liked your teaching, and I wanted to hear the story from you." So we talked for 2 hours. Okay, but the fundamental thing she said was, I said, "What's the issue?" She said, "The thing is, the students don't believe you should talk about this stuff because you're white." That's the white students.
Yeah, we shouldn't be talking. And then even worse, like counting how many black people are in. So let's just, we both love British jazz, don't we? So let's do a bit of let's do a thought experiment here, because if they're right about us, then this should go a certain way. Let's name who we think are the best ever British jazz players. Let's just
We've all got personal...
who's your favourite British jazz players? and also ones that had influence, changed the industry, not just our personal favourites, but musicians that really changed this scene and added to it. Who would you say
Well,
would?
there's lots for me. I mean, like ones that spring to mind. It depends who I'm listening to at the moment.
Mm,
John Taylor, piano player,
yeah, amazing,
really amazing.
absolutely amazing player.
On my own instrument, people, I grew up listening to Ray Worley and Peter King, who both passed away now. When I
Yeah.
was a teenager in my 20s, they were the people, two alto saxophone players that I would go and see. Dudu Pokwana I liked, who's the South African saxophone player as well, and the Blue Note, I listened to them. And now on my instrument, I would say Jeff Simpkins, you might not even know him.
No, I don't know.
He's an incredible improviser. He's about 10 years older than me. And Steve Buckley, who's my generation, who used to play in loose tubes. They're two alto players on my instrument. Tenor players. I mean, there's loads. Bobby Wellens, I used to love. I mean, incredible amount of players. I mean, another thing about me is I've recorded about 30 or 40 interviews with jazz musicians, many who've passed away now, and I had this rule, and I started this 15 years ago. They needed to be at least 10 years older than me, so in the previous generation, because I was intrigued by how they learned, because there were no colleges,
Yeah, I've always been interested in that.
They're all self-taught.
Yeah.
And it all took them a bit longer. This is the thing about the benefit of the colleges, I have to say. You can get to it a bit quicker, knowing how to practice. But there's something so great, and I'm one of that generation as well, self-taught players. It took me ages to work out what's going on or how to practice anything. But there's something very individual about that, where you're just coming to it completely on your own with a few tips from other people. I used to go on jazz courses in the summer. No one could teach. They're hopeless teachers, that generation above me, most of them. They're hopeless teachers. So you just hung out with them and watched them play, and you had to learn like by osmosis. Now it's more methodical, and I'm not totally with you I'm not going to criticize these colleges in that way, because I actually think there's a lot of really good things about them. But the introduction of fees is not one of them. So
when you started to think of the musicians you were picking, and for me, I would have to say Courtney Pine was a huge, groundbreaking. To have someone on the TV and somebody who was getting albums in the charts, and that whole group with Julian Joseph and Mark Mondesi is probably, in terms of British drummers, I would say it's Gary Husband. Simon Phillips and Mark Mondesi would be my heroes there. So, but as I'm going through these, I'm not really thinking of race. Are you?
I never thought of race.
No.
Until I'm forced to think it's not race.
Yeah.
Skin color.
It's just players. It's just players, isn't it?
It's not race. This is the thing. It's not. Black people are not a separate race.
No.
If we're talking Britain, they're not like this. I know people hate exclusive, but it is only the human race.
Yeah.
Identifying with skin color or anything for me is a superficial thing. I understand the history and why people might want to do that, and because of the extreme racism that has existed.
Yeah.
I can understand people want to identify with skin color, but for me, it's low level. Honestly.
The thing that I've learned out of this is that if you've got British culture. And then within British culture, you've got working class culture, you've got middle class culture. They're two separate things. And nobody is one of these. Everyone's a mix of all these. And then you've got Black British culture, which is a thing. I can remember growing up in a sort of white rural town where I grew up here. And then when I went up to Wolverhampton, which had a much bigger Indian and black community, for me, I was at home. I could never join a band in my town because they all were listening to The Clash and the Ramones, Then I went up to Wolverhampton. It was reggae and funk and the Bhangra. I ended up playing on the Bhangra thing. But that was a cultural thing. There's a cultural difference. And I think if you're Black British, that is a cultural thing. And you can point to it and you could say, that's my culture. But not much beyond that. You could say that's a part of my culture, and I've got no problem with that. In America, I think jazz is a part of Black American culture. Of course, it's a part of Black American culture. It represents that. But the idea that anyone can then own it or be proud of it, and by the other side, to be made to feel guilty about white British culture, which is what they're trying to do. This is a battle. It's a battle to go, we're better than you. You can't do this. You're like that. And it's really trying to do what white people did to black people. It's just trying to do it back to white people, as far as I'm concerned. And my morals are like, if something's wrong, it's wrong. Racism's not wrong. It's nothing to do with black and white. Racism is wrong because it's wrong. Judging an individual based upon any characteristic about them, any cultural characteristic or religious characteristic. You can't judge an individual based upon that. You shouldn't do it. And you'll always get it wrong. And that, like in a Kantian ethical way, you know, a categorical imperative, as Kant said, once you've decided it's wrong. And so what I see is racism. And I don't mean racism towards white people. I see racism towards everybody. The racist gene sneaks back in. And that's what's happened at Trinity Laban, is the racist gene has snuck back in. And now no black person that's playing jazz can even know whether they're there because they're good at black. No, I mean, how many of the students got there? But, you know, when people think, oh, you better make sure he's not, you know, they're not that good, we better have him on the course because I'm going to get measured how many black people we've taken on. And all those black people who go to bloody Trinity Laban, they're all poshies. Now, I've just made a prejudicial judgment on them, and I'm sure there were a few working class, you know.
Well, hold on. That's very interesting what you're saying.
Yeah.
So, people can't help their backgrounds. If someone's born into a rich family, okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Someone's born into a poor family, that aspect of them, it's not irrelevant because it affects their whole life.
That's their culture. They should be proud of it.
Yeah, or not. Depends whether they want to take on their parents' family.
Yeah.
That's a big subject. You know, poor, rich, doesn't matter, black, white.
Yeah.
But as I said earlier, the climate's changed because of fees. That's one thing. When you say racism's going on at Trinity, what do you mean? Racism against me? Or what do you mean?
No, I'm on about the fact that nobody knows why they're there anymore. Nobody knows why they're teaching there. The students don't know why they're there. Nobody knows. And say if you're a black student at Trinity Laban, but they agree with you, oh my God, could black people actually agree with you? Yes, because you can't assume what someone's opinion is by their skin colour. So what do they do then? What do you do if you're a black student at Trinity Laban and you agree with Martin Speake? Do you say anything about it? You keep your mouth shut.
And this is not only students, this is musicians.
Yeah.
You know, I know because I heard from various sources that certain black musicians think, yeah, I'm right. But I don't need, the other thing about it is I don't need their opinion to know what I think. See what I mean? I don't need to be...
And again, what they're forcing you to do is consider their opinion and the veracity of their opinion, not whether it actually hangs together as a logical argument. You're judging their opinion based upon their skin colour. You can't talk about this, but I can because I'm black. Oh, so can this other black person talk about it? Well, yes, but they don't agree with you. Oh, well, they probably got taken in. And then all of this is race. It's racist towards everybody.
Yeah,
right?
I completely agree with you. You've got it. You understand? And this is a problem. Once it's brought into the arena, everyone's so confused. The young people are confused because, oh, did I get into Trinity because I'm black? And that's understandable. Mate, I don't know because I was never allowed to do the auditions in the end. So I don't know. I actually don't. I can't.
Who did the auditions?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, Hans Koller would do the auditions and. All the other, I don't know, Tom Challenger, Julian Siegel, probably.
So they did have jazz musicians on the interview.
Oh, of course, yeah. Oh no, the auditions.
Because at my college, when all this was going on at mine, there was a move where I did all the interviews, and then suddenly we were no longer interviewing them. No music staff was interviewing.
Oh, so it'd just be admin or HR. Probably.
Yeah, and the reason for that is it's quite simple. Having a jazz course. That's the juicy little apple at the in the middle of it. But it's not what it's about. That just draws them in. They're drawn in, and then once they're in, they're there to do a certain thing, and it's to follow a certain academic process, right? And so what is it? Pay the fees to keep the universities going, keep them out of jobs so it affects the unemployment figures, blah, blah, blah. All these things box and ticks by the government. And fundamentally, in the end, that shift in the academy from free thinking, let's, question certain ideas, have counter ideas, and teaching people how to do that, that got shifted across. Now, anyone who thinks I'm lying, go and look at, if you look in the UK, just look at the GCSE syllabus. Just look at, if you just look at this year, the English GCSE syllabus, they can't write what they think. The teachers say, you've got to explore what this play is about, and this is what you need to say. This is what they're looking for. They're looking for this.
Whole of education is mind control.
Yeah.
The whole of it. The difference, and there is mind control going on here at Trinity.
Yeah.
The difference with these conservatoires, which is why they're generally better than everywhere else, but they're not great, obviously, is people are playing music together still. Okay, so there's a bias of the ensemble leader. There's a bias of the head of the course. Right? Like Hans Coller's got more a bias of Thelonious Monk, for instance, and the Royal Academy of Music. Nick Smart's got a bias of Kenny Wheeler. In the emphasis on the course. And that's fine. Individuals going to have a bias, but I'm going to still, even though they've treated me incredibly badly, all of these places, that I'm going to say there are really good things about them still because they are playing music.
Martin, I've got to say this. I know, because I know loads of music lecturers. I know jazz teachers all over the country. I'm speaking to them all. The actual teachers on the ground are good guys on the whole, and good gals. They're good. They know what they're doing. The actual what's going on between the music teacher and the student is good. Yeah. It's not that I'm criticising. It's the fact that when you talk to them, they seem to be slowly sinking as the education is shifting above them.
You mean staff? You mean the staff are sinking?
The actual institutions themselves are changing. They're changing around them, and someone gets to a certain age, they've got more experience, they're a good teacher, but they're looking around going, my God, how am I supposed to operate in this system?
Okay.
I know someone else has been suspended now in another university. I don't want to say too much about it, but they've been suspended because
same issue.
They put an album cover up in a talk.
They put an album.
The album
racist, is it? Or
it was deemed to be racist by one student. So at that point, that person is then marched out, and they are now suspended and fighting for their job.
Of fascism, or whatever you want to call it,
yeah,
going on. But I just want to pick you up on something here. Okay, so back to my case. These teachers in all these institutions, but particularly Trinity Laban, because that was the place where I got cancelled primarily.
Yeah.
And so go back to that. What happened early on is that my lessons are cancelled, temporarily halted. So immediately, other staff take my lessons, my work. They don't call me up and say, what's going on?
I know.
I know. You're all right. What's going on? I mean, this is outrageous. What's happening? I'm not going to take your classes. Okay, so that's going to be whoever. I don't know who it was. Tom Challenger, I mentioned Julian Siegel, Bruno Heinen. I don't know all these people at Trinity Laban, because there are very rare people now who will not take the money and the job or the gig. Every jazz musician.
But Martin,
they're concerned about the next gig.
But it's more than that. It's more than that, because I had the same thing happen. I know I've been there.
Let me finish. Yeah. Because where's the community gone? That's what's interesting about this. I've been part of this jazz community for 40 years or longer, right? I'm one of their own, apparently. But maybe I've got more diverse ideas. Or I've got ideas that are controversial. This is one of them. And maybe I have some other ones. But that's not, no, he's not one of our community. The students are our community. As the principal said at the time, we're in awe of our students. And the staff all kept their head down and shut up. This will happen to them eventually in some form, because the system is becoming more totalitarian.
Yeah.
Everyone has got to obey whatever whatever has got to obey the current narrative. The narrative on me for the last 2 years, overall, publicly, has been to attack me.
But the thing is, you got to understand, and this is what I was trying to butt in, this ideology comes from Marx through the critical theorist to the postmodernist, right? Now, Marx said that anything that enables the revolution is valid, right? So it's not like they don't understand your argument. It's not like they don't see the logic of your argument. That's not the point. And with people like Marcuse who came into the critical theorists, right? This idea is you're up against a bourgeoisie, which is you're trying to pull that down, right? And so whatever's valid to bring about that revolution, you can do, and it doesn't matter about right or wrong or truth. And Marcuse was a philosopher that really stated the idea that the universities need to change and have a Marxist agenda behind everything. Now, that might sound absolutely ridiculous, but if you check out my one niece's art college doing every single essay is, describe feminism in art, or look at two transgender artists and study them. And when they write those essays, they have to say a certain thing. My other daughter's just done her GCSEs and she had to do a Marxist evaluation. I was sat there because I understand Marx saying, yeah, that represents that and that represents that, and there's the bourgeoisie, that family's the bourgeoisie, and that's what's going on. And then they have to go in and write that in the essay at GCSE level with 15-year-old kids. This is what is going on.
I know, now, it's programming.
And I bet, yeah, and there's the academic aspects of it, right? Now, jazz in the 1980s, funding-wise, they realised jazz was just a dream in an identity, based academy for funding. Because they used to come in and say, look, have you got any black people in your curriculum when you're going through? Oh yeah, loads. We've got Louis Armstrong, we've got Jimi Hendrix, B.B. King, we've got Stevie Wonder, we've got Charlie Parker, and they used to go, oh, this is brilliant, tick, 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 tick. And I'm there now. And the thing is, I play that, and I did a jazz, I didn't have to, but I did a jazz module with my students, And they loved it because rather than just get up and play Nirvana songs or white bands, they could say, this guy's doing all this good stuff. Secretly, I know I'd pick those musicians because they're the best in the world. It had nothing to do with whether, I thought they were black or not. They hadn't got on the list because they were black as far as I was concerned. And I got on the list because they were bloody good, and my students should bloody listen to James Brown or Ella Fitzgerald or Billie Holiday or whatever it is I was making them listen to, because they get better. And so, yeah, we're all playing the game, and they know it. But the thing is, it shows how captured it is. Now, my belief is that these neo-Marxists that are behind it, and that's what BLM were. They were neo-Marxists, no one talks about BLM anymore because obviously they all ran off with $100 million and bought themselves mansions, like every good Marxist should in the end. If you don't end up in a mansion, if you're a Marxist,
in white suburbs.
Yeah, but they did. They basically, BLM, what was going on the ground in America was brilliant. There was funding there and they were helping black communities. Absolutely amazing, right? Irrelevant of what's kicked it off, but the people that were running it just siphoned $100 million off into their own pockets and bought themselves mansions. That's why BLM's not mentioned anymore. That's why you don't have to be in an organisation and have something pushing that you have to agree with BLM, which is what happened to you and what happened to Sean Corby. Honestly, that's gone. But the neo-Marxists,
they still exist. I presume they still exist. Yeah.
They're disgraced. As is Robin DiAngelo and Ibram X. Kendi, who brought the critical race thing. They didn't invent critical race theory. Actually, critical race theory, the 70s version of it, has got a lot to offer. And go, let's look at the legal and structural processes and see where structural racism is. But the stuff that Ibram X. Kendi and Robin DiAngelo pushed on us, and of course they're completely disgraced as well, because they were all getting rich. That's the whole point. But these neo-Marxists that are behind what's happened to you, they are puppets because they are being manipulated by something much bigger
I agree,
because
of
because
course,
they like the fact that they control what people say.
of course.
That's
Yeah.
what it's. That's what it is, and we're all together. Even though I get labelled a neo-Nazi and a Marxist, a neo-Marxist and a
Do
fascist,
you?
yeah, all day long, and I pretend it doesn't bother me. Actually, really, when I get called a racist, it really upsets me. It's like the
Oh, it's
worst
so
thing.
negative energy. It's
I just hate it. I think I'm not. How can I get across that I'm not a racist? And
well, you
or
can't win everyone over. You can't. You can't.
no.
You can't
If
do it.
someone said
Got
you've
their own
done
agenda.
this, and if I went, well, see, I don't believe people are racist. I believe people do racist things. I don't think it's a thing that you are. I think it's a thing that you do. And I'm sure everyone can be racist, and I'm sure I could be, but I'm really trying my hardest not to be. And if I have been racist, if someone said you've been racist, I'd come out here and apologise for it. But I don't believe that's what this is whatsoever. And the neo-Marxists, I think, if you actually got down to it, they believe there's an elite that are controlling everything, and that's really what's driving them. The same as driving all of us. We're all in the same boat.
I
We're all in the
completely
same
agree.
boat.
That is why it's so sad, this polarization
Yeah,
and inability to talk about difficult subjects. And
yeah,
that's what's going on, which is why they're laughing at us. And I'm not talking about the heads of these institutions. It's way above that.
way above. Yeah,
It's in the shadows. We don't even see these people. There's a handful of people controlling everything, and they're puppet. We're puppets. Oh, good. We can. What should we get them to split on? Here we go. COVID. Let's get them to disagree on that. Let's get them to just disagree on climate change. Let's get them to just disagree on Israel, transgender, and race. I would say they're the main topics where there's this ridiculous division, and all of these are manufactured.
totally.
They're nothing
And
coming from the box.
if you are watching this now and you're one of these middle class metropolitan types who has gone to an education quite recently, you've been trained to have this thought now, and I'm saying it right to you. You've been trained to think, oh, they're getting into conspiracy theory stuff now. Martin and Andy going all conspiracy theory. And my answer to,
Okay. Right. So
there's a big global elite that are eating children and they've got temples on islands that they worship Moloch. Oh God, it's actually
this
called
is actually almost in the mainstream.
It's almost, I know.
Because of the Epstein files, which only 3.5 million have come out. But I've seen so many proper researchers look into this. But you don't have to be a proper researcher. You just look into
Yeah.
It's grim, and it's only the tip of the iceberg. Right, conspiracy theory term. Evan Parker said, no, I'm a conspiracy observer, right? So, and I named a tune for Evan called Conspiracy Observer, right? So, conspiracy theory was put in mainstream America in the 1960s by the CIA to journalists that they were paying on their payroll, okay, because they didn't want anyone who questioned the JFK assassination, which surely everyone knows now, it's not a lone gunman.
Yeah,
okay, so conspiracy theory has been in for 60 years in the programming vocabulary that we've grown up with, okay? So, you question COVID to your conspiracy theories. You question, you question climate change, your conspiracy theories. These people, their perception is programmed from what they read. And if you're only going middle class white, as you say, me, I wasn't.
Yeah, we are all this. We are all.
I don't know what middle class white is, but
Martin, we're allowed to speak about our own culture.
Yeah, exactly. I can tell you about my upbringing and everything. So my cousin. I go for walks with my cousin sometimes, and this was a few years ago, probably in the COVID era, and I said something about questioning COVID. And she went white. She's white, but she went even whiter. She said, "Oh my God, I just go to the BBC and the Guardian for all my perception." She wouldn't say perception, but that's actually what it is. Now, if people are locked in only to the mainstream, you will not know what the hell is going on in the world at all. A few tidbits come in, like probably things. Probably I don't know. It's probably on the BBC now. But this is the whole point, people's perception. So you go back to the race thing. If people are brought up in a certain way that they are, that your life is just terrible because you're black, and white people are the enemy, that is your perception, unless you question your perception.
Perception, yeah.
So I'll give you. So my mother, I'm from my mother. My father died before I was 6, so I was just brought a single parent. My mother brought me and my brother up. So, and I've done a lot of work on myself over the years. So I thought, okay, my mother was amazing to do that, but I don't agree with her support of the royal family, for instance, or, you know, but this is what she did for us. That was amazing. I agree with that aspect of her perception. You see what I mean? She was not going to question anything. It was too much for her. She was dealing with bringing 2 boys up. So I'm lucky that I've read a lot of stuff. I've questioned things when these things happen. Do they really mean that? Why is authority telling us this? Is it just for their salaries? Are they being threatened? I'll give you one example. Boris Johnson, at the beginning of COVID, he wasn't in favour of lockdown. No way was he in favour of lockdown. He suddenly goes away and he's got COVID, right? Which I completely don't believe. And then comes out and he's pro-lockdowns. So I believe, I'm not going to prove this, I can't. I believe someone whispered in his ear, either we're going to threaten your family unless you go along with this. And so now you promote lockdowns to the people who completely trust the government and completely trust the BBC and the Guardian, who are mouthpieces of the BBC's mouthpiece of the government.
Yeah.
So if you're only getting your perception from these places, your tunnel vision is unbelievable. And the bigger point about this is a lot of people want an authority figure. They want a savior, in Trump as an example. They want an authority figure to tell them what to do. And this is from birth. And I had that as a child. You know, when you go to the GPs don't wear white coats, but you know what I mean. The GP is supposedly an authority figure. I know much more about health than GPs personally, and probably ordinary people do as well, actually. So that's one example. Or your teacher is that you go to school and you're 5 years old, and up to the age of 7, you are downloading, because you're in the beta state, I think it's called. You're downloading information. So my upbringing, I thought, it's the same as everyone else's upbringing. They don't have a father either, because I don't got a father. You know what I mean? Or I live in this kind of house. So doesn't everyone? No. But of course I see other places. So until about the age of 7, you're completely programmed by your perception of your parents, schools, television, whatever. And now social media, well, at least you and I didn't have all that stuff when we were young. So we had less programming than young people now. So go back to Trinity Lab and these 95 students, I don't believe they all think the same thing. However, there's a certain amount of programming, of course, and the whole thing about the world generally, I broaden it out, is they can't step out of line because they are scared of consequences. They're i.e. cancelled. Okay? This is all staff, 90% of staff, a couple supported me, all staff and all students in that little scene of my little world of Trinity Lab and all the other colleges. They are completely scared. I'm not scared. As I said in earlier interview, I'm really sad. I'm totally sad about the loss. How all these young people are completely scared of stepping out of line.
And I can back Martin up. I know that these ideas that we are saying in the colleges, that it was sort of like 60 to 70% of my students at 16 didn't agree with it. And they would do things like trying to get me to say something that would be politically incorrect because they knew it existed. These naughty boys, these lads who were that would have just loved, for me to say something, and they wouldn't have told on me because they were good lads, but they wanted to discuss it. The thing is that what you said is so interesting. You had an upbringing, that's your culture. You get to a certain age and you took all the bits that you agreed with, that your parents and and also the cultural background that you come from. You take the bits that you agree with, but you rebel. And by rebelling, you create your new future. And because everybody's allowed to do that, they create the new future. And if the kids can't actually question things in a way that's shocking, it has to be shocking. And as you're talking, I'm thinking, Martin is like, you are a fixture of the British jazz scene. And you have got a whole ton of experience, and you are an incredibly talented jazz musician. What people don't understand is that once you've got to that skill level, it's not about skill, it's what you say. And people don't understand how all the ideas that you are talking to me about, they come out in your playing. If once you've got the control and you can express yourself. So your ideas that you're saying to me now, I believe are it's an expression of how your mind works, and it's essential that your mind's allowed to think like this, because if not, you can't play.
Very interesting. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Even though the jazz doesn't talk about things in a sort of rational, verbal way, that I can say, if I thought of, say, Ornette Coleman and John Coltrane, they are both black jazz musicians caught up in an era where the civil rights movement, and they're both expressing that in their freedom. They want to make jazz more free. But Coltrane comes at it because he's almost like tortured, and he's trying to raise himself up, where Ornette Coleman is like, he's a jester, and he just like almost like a weird jester magician. He goes, well, I'm just here, and I can feel that in their playing. I can feel it, you know, there's similarities and differences, and it's all to do with that time they were in. The jazz was free. The straitjacket of bebop was freedom to that generation, because it like stuck their fingers up to the sort of minstrel show that Louis Armstrong was doing. That's what Charlie Parker was doing, the beboppers. And then Ornette and Coltrane and Albert Ayler, they were all almost like a primal scream of the African American experience in jazz. And the thing is you could go, oh, I don't know, Andy. We could disagree about it, but we can point to jazz musicians like you've got to agree that, say, Mingus is far more politically motivated.
But he does it in an obvious way.
Yeah, then say Bill Evans is. Bill Evans is a different, is much purer. When I say Bill Evans is purer than Mingus, does that make sense to you?
Well, Bill said, if you watch the interview with Bill with his brother, The Universal Mind of Bill Evans, it's on YouTube. It's wonderful. He says, well, what can I do about all the wars in the world and all the hatred and all the killing? I feel I can't do anything. All I can do is just play my music really well, and I'm just going to do that. I'm going to practice and practice and practice, and someone's going to knock on my door and book me. You know, it's a different thing. I don't know whether Coltrane was super political. Actually, I don't think he was, because his later life was he got religious.
Spiritual, yeah.
But, well, kind of religious, spiritual way, believe in God. And
Albert
Ayler is another kettle of fish altogether. So those I don't know. I didn't know those people. I wasn't around at the time. I can only we get our listen. We can only get our perception from what we've read.
Yeah,
and listening to their music.
Yeah, listening to their music. One of the things that was a must doing this channel, and when I was looking at the history of jazz, I had a revelation, which I thought, I've listened to this so much that I can actually put the headphones on and listen to a musician, and I could actually, it's subjective, but you can feel where they're coming from. So if you take Coltrane, the tune Alabama is incredibly political, but it's also spiritual.
That's obvious, because he's called Nathan.
But when you listen to that, that's my favourite Coltrane album, Live in Birdland. I just love that album. When you listen to that album, it's got all the stuff that Coltrane does, but when he comes to deal with that, he changes. You know, the cadenza on the there's a cadenza on Live at Birdland. Have you ever heard it on
on another song? And I want to talk
on another tune. Yeah,
I want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Often does a cadenza on that.
And that, if you think that's why I love that album, the breadth of what Coltrane's doing there, that cadenza on I Want to Talk About You, and then the way he plays on Alabama.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
I need to all listen to that. But here we go. Look.
Yeah.
So music, when we listen to music, it's subjective.
Yeah.
It's all to do with our experiences in life up until that moment, and we hear this thing. However, when you compare Coltrane and Ornette, I was kind of on the same page as how you were describing it, because they have a very different emotional impact on people. Then you can just, you in a way, Coltrane's more intense. The sound is more
Yeah.
intense. It's more complex. And Ornette, you kind of said a gesture. This is very interesting because Ornette is simpler in a way. He's actually simpler. He'll play in one key for a bit, and Paul Blade describes it as then he'll raise that key by doing a squiggle, and then he'll play another key. He's super diatonic, simple, like a folk music. Incredible, and I love them both for
Yeah.
reasons. Because music, what's so wonderful about us being alive at this time, and there's a reason. There will be a reason why we're alive this time, and why we're talking to each other. Is we can hear this music that's called jazz, that's never existed before in history, and it's only existed for 100 years now, roughly. And we are in this moment of being able to listen to these beautiful musicians who, those two, and Charlie Parker and others, Bill Evans, lots of others, Thelonious Monk, are able to be totally in their expression. They're not inhibited. Going to this thing, Kenny Werner, Effortless Mastery. Maybe you've read this book. Kenny Werner, very interesting, and he lists all these musicians, because they can get in the zone. This is the challenge of life. Not just playing, but walking down the street or with a friend or doing anything or eating. Being in the moment is the hardest thing to do. It sounds very simple, and be in the moment and also not give a shit what other people think. And this is what Kenny Werner said about Thelonious Monk. No one's playing like him, and all of those people, and Miles and Coltrane and Charlie Parker, because they can be totally in the moment, and it's the hardest thing. When we have a conversation, even now, can we stay 100% in the moment, or you and I, are we immediately thinking, oh, I've got to say that, I'm going to say that.
Yeah.
No, I've got to butt in, which is fine because we are sort of in the moment, aren't we?
Yeah.
The challenge is for one of us to speak quite a long time. For me, this is a challenge. You speak a long time and then me hold what you've said and respond to those things. But this is exciting. I love it. I'm really appreciative of you, Andy. Everything you do, it's great. And I've got to meet you in person. Come on, we got to play. We got to play. So you see what I'm getting at? The two things with all of this, and that's why I'm attracted to those people. However, and I've done this with people, I could say this moment in Coltrane on Blue Train, it's so moving for me, this phrase. And someone else, I'll play it to them, and they might not get it. They might, oh no, this bit's much more moving for me later on.
Yeah.
That's individual, it's subjective, and it's all to do with our life experiences. Why those intervals, in my case, why those certain intervals, why the sound of Coltrane, why the phrasing, the articulation, the rhythm, why does that affect me so much in that bit and not anybody else? And then somebody else, oh, this bit. You know what I mean? So music is completely subjective in the end.
I'm trying to touch on something. It's quite hard to explain. I'm going to try and put it like this. When I interviewed you 2 years ago, roughly about then, I wasn't as good as interviewing, and I talked over you, and I felt bad afterwards because I talked over you. But I knew that if I just let you speak, you may as well just send me a video over on your iPhone. You could just spoke it. So I've got to find a way of doing it. Now, I think over the last 2 years, like a jazz musician, I've got better. And this is probably the best one we've done. And the reason is because I'm butting in. When I do butting in, it's because I'm aware of the whole overarching structure of what I would like to try and touch on. But it's like you are trying to build a sculpture out of smoke, because as you said, the conversation can go anywhere, hither and thither. And that balance between those two things is very similar to being like a jazz musician. When you start your solo off and you can't just blaze for like 5 minutes. You've got to have an overarching structure. And some jazz musicians talk about the gears, don't they, or whatever it is. A lot of people come to me and ask me, and I've spoken to legendary jazz musicians. What I always ask them: how do you structure your solos? because that in the zoneness it's like trying to find the knife edge between those two things, isn't it? Where you want to emote, but you also want to hold back. It's like Simon Phillips said to me. It's like you've got a cooking pot, but you keep the pressure on from above. He said to me, imagine you're playing like a dial, and as the intensity comes up, as soon as it gets there, he said, just push it back down. He said, and then let it come up of its own accord like that. But these things we're discussing are also happening in these conversations, you see. And so I was like, I want Martin to just explain what's happened. Let's deal with the court case. Let's talk about the politics, our opinion about it, have a little chat, and then let's move to the music. That was my plan, and that's what I'm trying to follow. But my idea was different to the way you've taken this, which is to actually talk about what it is to be a jazz musician and what the job is, which I would describe as trying to get on that knife edge, between those two things. And I think what's interesting, you said something like, it's down to you, it's your individuality that determines that. You're trying, but you're not trying to do that in a vacuum. People think when I criticise the education system that I'm against people practicing jazz standards or learning how Charlie Parker did. I'm all for that. I just don't think there's enough of the other bit, not in the teachers. I'm sure you taught this, but being able to say to someone, that's really cool what you're doing. You don't have to sound like Chris Potter. Actually, what you're doing is great. I always used to ask my art teachers at college that. I said, how do you recognise when somebody's doing something you don't understand?
Do you want me to come in? It's like a...
Yeah.
Okay. So this whole thing about studying jazz, as an example, it could be anything, but it's simple for me in learning from the past. Well, the Clark Terry thing is the one. Imitate, assimilate, innovate. That's the one. And everyone is different in how they approach it. Some people are big transcribers of solos. John Toussaint, great tenor player, lives in England. His thing is, as far as I know, I never had a lesson with him, but I know lots of students who taught me, is very transcribe solos, don't write them down, repeat after me. Assimilate that. But as far as I know, I might be wrong on this, not an analysis of it. You're just getting the whole narrative of the story, you play along with the recording. That's great, all that stuff's great. I've done a certain amount of that. There are other people who only take snippets and they don't want to do the whole solos. There are other people who don't believe in copying at all. Generally, that's naive, I think. You have to do, everybody, whatever they say, has copied someone at some point, or ideally copied lots of different people. Branford Marsalis's one, it's like, say, in an interview, said, well, 6 months, just Sonny Rollins, transcribed, trying to be like 6 months, I don't know who else, Lester Young, 6 months, John Coltrane. A methodical way of doing it. That's all good. Now, you have different personality types. There, you can hear out there are people who are carbon copies, as much as they can be, of someone they love. And they're not going to go any further. And sometimes it's a career move. Someone sounds like really good, like David Sanborn, he's not with us anymore. Oh, maybe you can take all his work. There's a very original saxophone player, it's David Sanborn, but he loved Hank Crawford. He admits, and he would have lessons off George Coleman. He's a very interesting guy. So it's individual. The way the colleges work, the way I've always taught, is to, I think there are certain people that are worth studying early on to get basics together, certain solos or certain people. But generally, I would say most students come with what they've been listening to and want to study themselves as well, separately from what I'm doing. And that's great. I love that, the individual. Well, I'm really into this. I said, well, do that then, do something like that. But there are certain basics in jazz, in the mainstream of jazz, like learn to play in all keys equally. Okay? So playing a blues and rhythm changes in all keys daily, eventually, is going to set you up.
Do you think that's a saxophone thing more than I
No.
mean,
Oh,
on the guitar, which I play,
it's a bit easier, isn't it?
I mean, you should do it, but
I
it
think it's the
doesn't.
saxophone, trumpet, maybe
Yeah,
saxophone,
yeah,
maybe I don't know. I don't know. There is a saxophone thing. No, but I was with Ethan Iverson, the
mm,
piano player I've recorded, the American piano player, who I'm sure, I hope you know, he's got a
yeah,
great blog and website, writes a lot
yeah.
on music. You know, and I was hanging out with him, and his warm up was the metronome on, probably metronome on four or something, and playing rhythm changes in all keys on piano. So there are things, but
Yeah.
that's for the mainstream of jazz. You know, Evan Parker wouldn't have done that. Evan Parker came, as far as I've worked out, although he loved Paul Desmond, I don't think he studied that music. Late Coltrane, Albert Ayler, John Chickeye, Albert Ayler, all these people.
Mm,
He's got lots
mm.
of other influences as well, of course, other kinds of music. So he wouldn't have done that, as far as I know. um, he would be doing other things, practicing saxophone in a very different way, I think, and also the multiphonics, which I've never gone into in a big way. Extended techniques, it's called, in terms are called. You know, I've never really gone into that in a big way personally, and that someone like him has. You know, so that's for a different area of the music. And then you will have people who really only want to play bebop, whatever you call bebop, that black American music, right? Only want to do that. So, and there are some great players, practitioners of that in Britain. So it's a narrow framework, and I actually envy them because they know exactly what they want to do, and they can study it to a really deep level,
Yeah.
rather than getting distracted like me. I love all that music, and I love Charlie Parker. He's one of my favourite musicians, and I try and play like that to a certain extent. But then, I'm really into Indian music here, and Arab music, or free playing, or Keith Jarrett, or all this other stuff. And so it's not a distraction, but it's that's another study. So it's
Yeah.
individual. It's individual.
Years ago, I was hanging out with these cognitive science, and cognitive science was a big thing about 15 years ago. Everyone was like obsessed, in the science world, and I was told about this. And I said to this one cognitive science, I said, "Can you tell me what's the most motivating thing for a musician to learn?" Because the thing I became aware of is that when you hear about a musician that sits there transcribing solos, when I hear that, my heart sinks because I would find that boring. So, but I know that guy does it not because they're a better person than me, because I've taught thousands of students. What it is, they're motivated to do it. Like someone says, you've got buried treasure in the garden, you're going to dig up your whole garden. The digging's horrible, but you want to find the treasure. So you're motivated, and every student's motivated towards certain things. I used to play, when I was a youngster, I used to play only in a certain time signature of my whole practice routine for that week. And I'm talking 21:16. Because I was obsessed
So where
with
did you get that from?
Billy Cobham.
Right. Well, so there you go. So
Yeah, yeah.
you might not have been transcribing, but you were copying Billy.
No, I transcribed, but I
Oh,
would only. I was one of those guys that only transcribed, and I'd write. I couldn't read music until I was about 25 when I went out with a girl who was a classical musician. She started to teach me, so I got basic reading. It never came in great. I can read anything. I know all the stuff on there, but I'm not a great sight reader. But I taught then, so I was always writing out all my exercises. So I think in notation, I was one of those guys that would transcribe one or two bars and then
okay.
go deep into what's
That's
going
great.
on
That's
there.
great.
Same thing. I learned to play my guitar by putting Miles Davis albums on, and because he always leaves a gap, I play his phrase in the gap. Da, 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 and I go like, dun, da, da, ba, ba, da, 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 ba, ba, da, da, da. I basically would just try and get bits. I agree with you 100% everything you're saying, but what is really interesting is it's to do with the motivation. So you're motivated to do it. No one's like a saint. You're driven. You wake up and think, "Oh, I've got to do that today." That's what musicians are like. And I think if you can bring that out of the student, if you can find what floats their boat, they're going to practice 9 hours a day. And I always do with my drum students. Once I got to that point and I could see them walking down the corridor and every service they were doing their thing, but I had to find a way of getting them. It was about motivation, not about telling them you got to be a good boy and practice.
I think it's different for conservatoire students to
So yeah, I was very good at
college
teaching
students.
16 year
Yeah.
olds.
So the
Yeah,
conservatoire, they've made it.
yeah,
They've made a decision to go there. They want to
yeah,
study jazz full
yeah.
time at a high level. And what you're saying is what I did. Obviously, the same thing. Find out what they're into
I've
as
been to,
well.
yeah,
However, I'm an experienced musician, and I have to
yeah.
diagnose them. I have to diagnose them, don't I? Well,
That's it.
your
That,
time's not very good,
yeah,
or you've got your choice of notes is not, on dominant chords, you're always playing the same thing. Your time's not very good. You can't play in E major. You can't play ballads. You can't play fast. You can't play in 3/4. It could be any of those things. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
That student,
This is so important that after all of this, that I'm an experienced teacher, but I was always teaching 16-year-olds and kids I taught privately. Some of those kids are like 9 or 10 years old. I wrote a degree and I ran it, but I never enjoyed teaching the degree students because I was much more interested in trying to explore that thing at a basic level. When you see a 16-year-old kid and the light bulb goes on, you know, I was always trying to get them to get into jazz. That's all I ever did. I thought once I can get them into jazz, they'll be good players. That was basically how I thought. Yeah, that's the way I thought. I thought if I doesn't matter if they're a rock player, a metal player, if I can get them into jazz, and so the, there's a lot of girl singers at the course. They're 16 years old and they come in and they like say the Cranberries or something like that. So I give them a blues, Ella Fitzgerald, and they start to sing that. And then the kids are working from a basic chord chart. And when they realise, oh my God, I could sort of do this. And when he first gave them the chart, they hate it. I can't read this. I go, it doesn't matter, but that's what we're working from. And, and a couple of months later, they need the chart in front of them. And but the thing that always struck me, this cognitive science, is I'll go away and ask some of my professor mates what motivates musicians. So he goes off, he comes back and he says, I found out what's the most motivating thing for a musician to practice and work hard. I said, what is it? He went, music. It was such a simple stat. He had to go off and find out. He
right.
said, no, he went, number one's listening to music and being inspired by it. Number two is talking about it. And I went away and thought, well, that's college. We're going to listen to music and talk about it. And then you become like a doctor. Because if you see players who need to work, it's usually because all these parameters they've nailed, but there's one parameter they haven't nailed and they don't want to go there, do they? Time is often one of them, isn't it? Or I taught jazz, but mine was also basic. I was always just trying to get rock kids into playing ever so what, or something like that. It was all that level of jazz improvisation. But I taught some great players how they play jazz, so I'm proud of doing that.
Right. I did before before the conservatoire thing. You have to remember that I taught in schools for 10 years first, peripatetic, so I'd done my stint there,
Yeah.
starting conservatoire, and also done all kinds of workshops over the decades at the lower
Yeah.
players, and then I suppose I went up to the
Yeah.
which is great. I loved, as I will emphasise more, the betrayal is huge. I have to say.
I know.
It's all these places, by the musicians, by the students, by the institution. It's so unnecessary. All this money that has been spent legally, it's absolutely insane when you think about it. I questioned an ideology. Can we have a chat about it? No. What's all that about? What is that about? It's a ridiculous knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah. Well, anyway. my point is that I've tried to in this conversation, I've tried to say things that you agree with and things that you don't agree with, and I've tried to.
For the sake of it, to me.
No. Well, I do. I think jazz is too prescriptive, and I think it's too elitist. I do.
Okay, but what experience do you have to say that? What do you mean by that? When you say prescriptive, you mean jazz teaching, or what do you mean jazz? Do you mean jazz education, or
jazz education? The sort of what you could sort of say the Berkeley chord scale school.
Oh yeah, well that's different. The American way is very different. Very.
Yeah.
Different. There are there's nothing like that at Trinity Laban to its credit. There's no. Although I think in some ways there could be a syllabus you've got to get this together. I mean, there's a syllabus of standard songs that, from what I remember,
Yeah,
first and
yeah.
second years you've got to learn. That's a good thing. That's learning repertoire in the music. It helps
No,
you.
that, yeah, I mean, you got, I've had this one sort of jazz YouTube. It's quite an interesting discussion because I've gone out there saying the creativity levels, there's no creative jazz happening at the moment. The jazz is dead, and I've said all this stuff. Um, part I get contacted with by so many musicians that went to jazz college.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that they
Here in the
say
UK.
no all over the world, and that there's including the UK, and there's a certain thing going on where they will say we weren't allowed to play this. I couldn't play this lick. I wasn't allowed to play like have chorus on my guitar or have this instrument and blah blah blah. Now Trinity Laban might not have been
I don't
in
remember
that,
that.
no, but that there is a thing that's going on like that, and when every time someone says you've got to check this new player out, this new young player, go check this guy out. When I go and listen to it, even though I was a fusiony chops guy, I go, yeah, they've got great chops, but
That's
but I don't seem to hear the personalities that I grew up with, whether it be Thelonious Monk, Bud Powell, Oscar Peterson, or Bill Evans. There's four pianists.
I have to agree with you on that. I do have to agree, and I always put people to this wonderful. I don't know whether you've seen this wonderful panel of musicians, Charlie Parker Centenary at what's Winton's place?
The Lincoln,
I think it was at the Lincoln Centre.
yeah, yeah,
Right. But anyway, that's another story. But at the Lincoln, Winton's not involved, but it's a panel. You can see it on YouTube. And whenever I want to have a cry or get moved, I put it. There's a couple of things I go to have a cry, and one of them is Dinah Washington singing "This Bitter Earth," which is at the end of the film Shutter Island. Anyway, that's another story.
yeah, yeah.
Dinah Washington, amazing. Charlie Hayden singing Wayfaring Stranger. But this moment in this panel, and it's Charles McPherson, the alto player, Terry Lynn Carrington, Rajesh, I can't pronounce his surname, the alto player, who else? And there's a rapper who's with Steve Coleman, a couple of other people. And Charles McPherson, the way he describes Charlie Parker is actually so to the point and so moving. And I'm going to paraphrase him because I can't remember his exact words, but you have to remember Charlie Parker at the age of early 20s, played the whole human experience in his playing. It wasn't about A minor 7, D7, sharp 11. That existed, that exists. It was never about that. He could create the whole of human feeling and expression within his improvising. From pathos, sadness, in ballad, unrequited love, anger, more, in my view, more than anyone else. A Coltrane I love, by the way, but I have to say, it's slightly more one-dimensional in the expression. I'll get shouted down for that, because I love Coltrane. Coltrane was a preacher, in my view, in how he played. Charlie Parker was more diverse in his emotional, how people can respond to him and how he played. That's my view. But the way Charles McPherson talked, I'll send you a link to this because it's so beautiful. The whole panel have great input on this. Terry Lynn Carrington's got this great story of Charlie Parker, her dad, Terry Lynn Carrington, I don't know whether you know her, drummer. Her dad I think he maybe was a musician as well. And so when he was a teenager, he went to see Charlie Parker with Miles Davis. With his mate. And Bird was playing with Miles. And they travelled to this place a long way. I can't remember where it was. And it's snowing. They get there and the gig's cancelled. Oh my God. But he's quite pushy, he's quite confident, the young Terry Lynn Carrington's father. And he said, let's go around the back and see them coming out the door, And there's the snow and these two kids are there and they come out. Oh. And Miles said, oh, no, it's just a couple of kids, let's go. And the Terry Lynn's dad says, we've come all this way and you're going to play. And Charlie Parker gets his horn out and plays in the snow for the two kids. It's such a beautiful story, isn't it? Anyway, so I'm going to send you a link to this because the whole thing is a lot of important things said, particularly by Charles McPherson in that interview about not being about A minor 7, D7.
No, yeah.
But
Well,
but it's learning all that stuff so you can express yourself. This is the point.
yeah.
If you've not got
I
any,
do,
go on.
do you, BB King didn't have to learn that stuff, though,
No, but
did
he
he?
expressed himself in a different way.
Right, yeah. So, that,
He still learned stuff.
yeah.
He definitely
Yeah,
learned.
yeah, but I think that's the whole. My point is that it has to come from you. It's motivate. You're motivated to seek that out. But the Charlie Parker thing is interesting. I was listening to Charlie Parker from about 13 or 14. I loved him. My dad didn't love him. He was into jazz, but he was into Jerry Mulligan and Bon Jazz Quartet. I heard Charlie Parker. He was on the TV as that hot ass thing, you know.
There's not many clips. There's only that one.
There's that one, yeah.
Another one with Coleman Hawkins where they're miming.
Yeah, they're miming. That's it. Yeah, and but that solo he does, and I can hear it in my head every note of it. You know, you know,
Well, the Hot House one.
that Hot House one, and there's stuff. And I used to
That's
listen
so
to
good
it,
to see
and
that.
he plays that phrase, and it goes on and on. And it goes on. It goes on for too long. Nobody else can play. This phrase is so logical that you follow it, but he seems to go over the bar, or maybe over another bar. He just seems to go. Do you know that phrase? And then when he comes out, it's all perfect. And I can remember becoming obsessed. I said to my dad, "I want a Charlie Parker album." So they bought me a Charlie Parker album for Christmas. This sort of kid I was, and I was obsessed by him. And to this day, I don't think. The beboppers and all that trap that they all got into, you know, the bebop trap as I call it, is because everyone wanted to sound like Charlie Parker. I don't blame them. But with Charlie Parker, it seems completely free. He just seems to be able to express anything on at that moment in time. And that's his personality.
This is a high level of human expression you're talking
Yeah,
about.
it is.
There's not many of these people. It's incredible. However, you know, if you listen to the interview with Paul Desmond and him, which is lovely to
Yeah,
hear
yeah.
talking, well, Charlie says, well, I did practice 15 at 12. Did you say 12 to 15 hours a day?
Yeah, yeah.
The neighbour's going to evict us. So, and he said, it's not done with mirrors, you know. So there is that. It's not to roll out of bed and you're a genius.
I don't
Yeah.
believe you have to put the hours in, but I believe those hours have to be motivated by some like a muse or some sense of
Okay.
and most of us just want to sound like someone else. With Charlie Parker, he was obviously driven to express himself in a way that was so new that it ushers in the second phase of jazz almost. It's, you know, you get
Yeah,
this.
well, the thing about him is that, you know, so Steve Coleman, the saxophone player whose music I also love, is a big Charlie Parker nut like me. And we often
Yeah.
have these emails about, I have to ask, oh, what's going on here with Charlie Parker, you know, and he's really studied it in depth. So have I, you know, but it comes
Yeah.
maybe to different conclusions and all this stuff. And he likes hanging out with older musicians to learn, which I do as well. But there's not many left now as we're getting older.
Yeah.
So I got this wonderful email from Steve when I said, Charlie Parker plays this whole tone phrase. And on live gigs, the end of the 50s, I've never heard this phrase on recordings, on studio. What's going on? Steve, where does this come from? It's just, I don't know where he's got it from. It's an unusual phrase. And he says, and it's like a PhD that he writes back to me. It's like a huge, brilliant email. If I've never sent it, I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
He says, oh, do you mean this phrase? Yes. Yeah, okay. So I was listening to, who's he listening to? Which saxophone? Was it Benny Carter? I can't remember which saxophone he said he got. I was listening to, it's going to come to me, I think it's Benny Carter, but I've got it wrong. No, sorry. It was
Johnny Hodges. Yeah.
He was listening to Johnny Hodges. Steve was at home listening to Johnny Hodges with Lyle Hampton, 1930, late 30s. And he's listening. Oh my God, that's the Charlie Parker phrase. So Johnny Hodges plays this break, 4-bar break, I think. And it's this kind of weird whole tone phrase. I mean, he was incredible as well, Johnny Hodges. This weird whole tone phrase. And he said, God, that's exactly where Bird got it from. And Charlie Parker was he took everything on. He listened to masses of music. You know, there's a one recording live at, which one is it? Live at Bird at St Nick's, where he plays a blues called Visa, and he massively quotes West End Blues, solo by Louis Armstrong, over the form. I mean, it's touching on what you said earlier. Bird plays over the form completely. Even now, he's unsurpassed sometimes rhythmically.
I agree.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And I just finished this, and oh my God, he's playing West End Blues, and he said, I think it's in a different key from the original. You know, because he's in E flat, I think originally. He's playing in blues in C. So he's playing this fret, and it doesn't fit with the chords at all. You know, he's much freer than people think, particularly on the, as you said, particularly on live recordings. And the essence of him is the thing to really learn from is the rhythm, because harmonically there were people more advanced. Actually, Don Byas, he got stuff from Don Byas, Art Tatum, Johnny Hodges, all these people, and he soaked it up and regurgitated it in different ways. This is the whole thing. And Steve Coleman in this, he said, look, I've hung out with Sonny Rollins, and he said Bird was a quoting fool. And what did he mean by that? And he didn't mean he's an idiot. He's like a jester or something, you know.
Yeah.
The jester where he soaks everything up, as I said earlier. And Steve said that, I think, in his words were, and he regurgitates it and puts it in a totally different context. So your 2 bars of Billy Cobham, you can use, as you know, you can use all over the place, right? And make it your own. And it's the same thing. So back to the transcribing. Yeah, some people just take little bits. That's great. I do that. I probably do that more, actually.
Yeah.
I never learned solos properly. I'm not this right, like the hardcore, like John Toussaint. And there are other people who don't do that at all. People who don't do that at all, and they're taking bits all the time. You know, for me, transcribing, I transcribe loads of tunes, loads of original tunes by, you know, Keith Jarrett or anyone, Wayne Shorter, anyone, Steve Coleman, or all these people, to see what's going on. For me, it's just to find out what is going on.
That's I was like that when I was young. It was like I was, and it was.
I'm still like that.
Yeah, odd time signatures I found fascinating, and there was something magical about rhythm, polyrhythms like 5/4 and things like that. I found that very interesting, almost as though there was a sort of dissonance and consonance rhythmically as well as and Charlie Parker was a master of that. That I tell you something. Don't you think there's loads of amazing jazz players, but there's certain jazz players, their phrasing is so good that you can't not listen. Louis Armstrong's got it, right? Charlie Parker's got it. Lester Young's got it. Charlie Christian's got it. Charlie Christian, yeah. When you listen to Charlie Christian, yeah, and all the other jazz guitarists afterwards, he never now sound like Charlie Christian, because his phrasing, it's just so it's like it speaks to you directly. You can't not listen to it. It like grabs you and holds you there. Coltrane's not like that for me. Coltrane's like, it's like you're away, you know, in this world that he's created, all these notes spinning out, you know. But it's like those players sound like they're talking to you.
Well, exactly, such a good point. There are some who are more storytellers than others. And Charlie Parker is totally that. Lester Young is totally that. And the ones you say, and Charlie Christian, yeah, it's more a storyteller thing, and there's a certain amount of clarity to it. There's no wastage.
And Louis and Charlie Christian, Charlie Parker, they also do something that I've noticed is their vocabulary is really wide. So they would play, if you take Louis Armstrong, he would play like a Rivalli arpeggio announcing a thing, and then he might play some chromatic type of run. Then he'll make a noise of like a car horn, and then he'll slur all over. I mean, the West End blues solo is almost like, it's incredible because he goes, this, you could do this, this and this. And that hot house solo at Charlie Parker, after all that dazzling, he goes, and he does that like, just It sounds like a car horn at the end.
I gotta check that photo
And then
out.
the trumpet comes in. I know it. I know it so well because so Parker
Oh, I
was.
remember. I remember then.
Yeah, you know, Parker
He
wasn't
picks up the
just.
phrase.
Yeah, and I think the bebop education, they forget that Charlie Parker would play all sorts of almost like free sounds, but that's what keeps your interest because the width of the vocabulary. It's, you know, you'd like arpeggio, oh yeah, and then suddenly now chromatic and all within. Oh, that's brilliant now, long and short. Oh, that's great. Now I'm going to make the sound of a train, or I'm going to make the sound of a car, or I'm going to. It's like he's pulling in this much wider vocabulary. A lot of the Charlie Christian's the same. I really think he's a forgotten genius. I wonder how much he influenced Charlie Parker because he's there at those Minton jams with Kenny Clark and Thelonious
They
Monk.
must have played to get known each other. I don't know when he was born. He died quite young, didn't he?
1942.
When was he born?
He was born in 1919. He was only like, yeah.
A year older than Charlie.
I really want to do a video about Eddie Lang, Big Spider, Beck, Charlie Christian, Clifford Brown, these musicians that we all, you know, respect and love, and make the point that these are like they were dead by 25. Scott LaFaro. It's
Look, a little.
yeah.
That's an interesting idea.
How could they be so good at that age?
I know this is it's otherworldly, isn't it?
It's otherworldly, yeah.
The maturity, the musical maturity of those people you just mentioned. That, you know, you go back to Charlie Brown or Charlie Christian, early 20s. What the hell was I doing when I was early 20s? You know, I know what's going on.
Did you think it could have been could you think they were like really brilliant players, but then they got thrust into an environment that pulled that out of them, that there was that sort of bebop era in the 1940s, that pressure cooker, and then it was all behind closed doors because there was a recording ban. And so, you know, so there's all this stuff going on. And then 1944, 45, the recording ban lifts. So Charlie walks into the studio and goes, yeah, this is what we've been doing. It's like, whoa, you know,
that's
it's like.
very interesting at that time, wasn't it? It was during the war. The other thing about this, the bigger picture, is maybe they're bringing something from past lives. Maybe they're you know, they're old.
Yeah.
Really, you know, who knows? Because you see people sometimes, and you see this people with people. They, you know, there's something, maybe they all know they're going to die young, not in a conscious way, but in a subconscious or unconscious way. And I've seen this with some people. There was this young trumpet player, Richard Turner, who used to teach at the Royal Academy of Music, and that his life was fast. You could see, and he died pretty young, very young, before 30, I think. And it wasn't a drug thing or anything like this, you know. But he was putting on gigs all the time. He got Americans to do these little gigs in London. It was amazing energy, a beautiful trumpet player, a lovely guy. And sometimes people burn faster. I just have to say that in their life. And then other people have this longevity thing, which I'm hoping for me. I'm the late developer.
You and me are slow burners. You know,
Yeah,
we
right,
don't.
exactly.
You know, it's like that's the whole thing. I do feel like that. I felt so frustrated in the world of music. I've done so many different things. I was so restless. I couldn't have been a jazz musician. You know, because
look where you're at now, though. It's amazing.
Yeah, I started off in Bhangra, then I went into the UK folk scene, then I played with Robert Plant, then I did the UK blues, the British blues and European blues scene, then I did progressive rock. Right, jazz never wanted me, ever. Never did they want me anywhere near. Too much double bass drum pedals, too many cymbals. I got asked to do a jazz gig last year, and my tech was over, and I said, shall we take the big kit? So I turned up at this little cricket club with 2 bass drums and toms.
Oh my God, wow.
I got my tech, and the other guys were like, it was really like an alien had descended, you know, onto the jazz.
Provocative then?
Yeah, totally. Like this is, you can't do this on a jazz gig. You know, 3 toms on the front, 2 on the floor, 2 big China cymbals up here, and I just played, you know, jazz swing on just about 3 instruments, but it was cool to have it all up. You know, but this has been a brilliant chat. I think we've got there down. We've gone from all your troubles to Charlie Parker and the beauty of music, and that's very inspirational.
Did you
And
need to know any more about anything? The thing about this whole settlement, which I can't talk about,
yeah,
it's great. I'm so glad it's over. This chapter, this legal
yeah,
chapter, but I've lost everything. It's not going to. It doesn't repair that. It doesn't. But
yeah,
I'm going to come out. I've got to come out of the ashes, haven't I? Like I've got to arrive. And so this is the new life for me. I'm really excited. And one thing I have
yeah.
to tell you about is that Rosie Kay, who is the dancer, choreographer who was cancelled, you can look her up if you don't know, and she set up Freedom in the Arts with Denise Farming. So Rosie has got she was cancelled at her own dinner party, right, by her own dance company. So she's got a project called The Dinner Party Uncancelled, okay? She's interviewed, it's a dance piece, so she's choreographed the dance piece. I'm not sure how many 5 dancers, which I've not seen, a piece. Then she's interviewed 8 people who've been cancelled, including me, long interviews, and she's going to extract excerpts of all the interviews. And then she said, can you compose the music for it? So it's going to be a film, and I've composed an album's worth of music called The Dinner Party Uncancelled with great musicians who will play with me, Tommy Emerton, guitar player, Matt Reddy, bass player, and Tom Hooper, drums, who are beautiful, supportive people. And I've recorded this album. So that's really exciting. She's commissioned me to write this music. And I was so inspired, I wrote it within a few days. And I'm not seeing the dance. And I've done the interview about my cancellation. So they're going to, her husband, Lewis Price, is the filmmaker. So he's going to cut it all up, use bits of my music with the dance, and then bits of my music over the interviews, I think. It's really exciting. I've never written for dance before, and I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing the dance.
Earlier on in this interview, I was shuffling around trying to make the point that you cannot be a jazz musician if you have to stifle your free thought and ask questions like, is there racism in the UK jazz scene, which is all you're guilty of doing, was that, right? And I was trying to show the link, and then right at the end here, you say, now I'm doing this piece, and this piece has something that I think great jazz has, because a lot of good jazz is, but they're played well, they're soloing great, blah, blah, blah. The great jazz is always about something, and it's really hard to make jazz about something, but, so if you take Kind of Blue, it is about nighttime, it's about the blues, but the blues taken in a different aspect. It ties all the music together. And it relates to, I believe, gospel music. I think it's got that he knew what, so what is question and answer. It's preacher and congregation. And the preacher goes, and then instead of amen, he swaps it for so what. So that is obviously what that is about. I think that, but there's something that ties that together. There's a concept that ties it together, and it's about a mood and a feeling. And I think what you're doing here is your jazz has moved on to now being about something. It's now going to represent something in this dance. It's really interesting because a couple of years ago, I worked quite extensively with a dancer called Marcia Edwards, a brilliant dancer. And I think she knows Rosie. And I was trying to explain to her what had happened to Rosie, because I followed that one as well.
Okay.
I know. And so that's another example of what we're talking about. I would love to interview Rosie, but it's a little bit outside the remit of my channel. But in terms of creativity, do you not think that this is happening to certain people? So somebody puts their head above the parapet, they say what they think, they get chopped down, they go through this terrible destruction, and then out of it, they come out actually making art which is relevant to today and is dealing with the issues that nobody actually wants to deal with. They are forced to confront this thing, and you and Rosie are now, you're doing something different, aren't you? It's
certainly in this case, certainly is a good.
Well, let's hope that moves on, and the Overton window is moving. I think they're losing ground. I think common sense is taking over. A lot of people are starting to stand up who were scared to speak and now will now speak. I don't feel that this video will be as controversial as it was 2 years ago when I put it out.
See the comments.
There will be a few like that Stephen Pratt
If is he a real person, or do you think,
I don't
or is it an
know.
AI generated thing? You know?
Well, people say these things are AI generated, but it was too. I got to be fair to him. It was quite humorous. Some of the stuff he says. I can't imagine AI calling you a baldy jazz twat or whatever it was that he called. That should.
I'm easily picked on. I'm easy prey.
But I have shamed him here there, so you don't have to worry. I hope he watched. I found it quite funny. A guy had a go at me the other day. I said something he didn't like, and he did the good thing of actually coming on the old messenger on Facebook and started having a go. And he was going, "What's your problem? Blah blah blah. You all this that." And we started chatting. By the end of it, we were like sending kisses on the messages because really.
That's good.
He said he was chatting away and he goes, Andy, I don't think you're a bad guy. I think you're a good guy. And once he said that, I thought, really? He went, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I said, well, the thing is, it just winds me up, people trying to control what people say. And he goes, well, I feel the same. And he says, and we didn't quite agree, but what we said is that we liked each other, and then he goes, anyway, let's forget talking about this. He says, what are you going to do this afternoon? And I said, I don't know, maybe some right-wing stuff, practice my goose stepping, stuff like that, go around and kick a few black people, stuff like that. And he burst out laughing. I believe that the thing that gets us all together, back together, is humour. I think that's the thing. It's... Yeah, they don't seem to have a sense of humour whatsoever.
No.
They don't have a sense of humour whatsoever, and I think that's the telling thing. You got to be able to laugh at it, and if you can laugh at it, it means there's something worth poking fun at, And so that's where we're at.
I agree.
It's been lovely talking to you, Martin. I don't know how long we've done, but it's been another long chat. It will go up unedited as it always does, And those of you here at the end, you got the best bit, which was Martin telling you about his love of Charlie Parker. I enjoyed that immensely.
I cry when I listen to him play. It's incredible.
Like, subscribe, do all the stuff. See you on the next video.